another episode of Phonics in Action. In this episode, the story is about chameleon letters and words with silent letters. Now, a chameleon letter is one letter that can have different sounds. Some chameleon letters in English are the letters Y, C, and G. First, we will talk about the Y sound, then we will talk about the letters C and G. And in the second part of the session today, we look at silent letter words. These are words where we pronounce one letter, but not the other, like knife, not knife, gnome, not gnome, and thumb, not thumb. So first up, part one, we're looking at the chameleon letter Y. A definition of this is that when you see the letter Y at the start of the word, its sound is always y, as in yes and yard. But the letter Y can also be a vowel sound. If it is at the end of the word, it can represent the I sound, for example, fly, or the E sound, for example, funny. The letter Y is a chameleon letter because it can change from one consonant to a vowel sound. The history of it? We know that in olden times, the printers borrowed the letter Y from the Roman alphabet. The letter Y for the Romans originally had the E sound, then it had an I sound, as in words like wife, for wife. Then it came to represent the sound in the word the, when it replaced an old rune letter for that sound, the. We know this because we sometimes see a sign designed to make us think of Old England, like ye olde inn, which actually meant in those days the old inn. Now we use the letters TH instead of Y for that sound, so the Y only stands for Y these days. When you listen to Y carefully, it does still have that Old English E sound. For example, when you hear the word yes, you hear an E, yes. Its varied history as a consonant sound and a vowel sound may be the reason that the olden day printers used it like that. They did not like a word to end with I, so they used Y at the end. I mean, there are no words in English ending with I, because they put Y instead of I. You can see it in words like sky and why. They also use the Y for the final E sound in words like baby. Nowadays, we use the Y in more words as a vowel sound than as a consonant sound. It's in thousands of words. Now, diagnostics. Do we really need to teach this? Well, it's best to check that students know it or they don't. Ask them to read words like sigh and Buffy. If they say swai and buffya, then they do not know the rule. Explain to them that the Y is a vowel sound at the end of a word. What can go wrong if you teach this? Nothing can go wrong, but be sure to explain that the Y is a Y sound at the start of the word and is a vowel sound at the end of a word. Explain the history, that the printers in the olden days didn't like to spell words with I at the end, so they put Y. Ask them to read this chart with final Y. So if the student says, "Oh, this is too hard, too many words," fold the chart so that only 3 or 4 words are showing. Make sure they practice the chart until perfect. Like here is a mini lesson on Y as a final vowel sound. Hello everyone. What we're doing today is learning about the chameleon letter Y. A real chameleon is a lizard that can change its color. The chameleon Y is also like that. It changes. It has a Y sound at the start of a word, like in the word yak. But it can have a long vowel sound at the end of a word, like in fly and baby. So I'll write those on the board. It has an I sound in fly and an E sound in baby. Remember that in the old days, the printers did not like a word to end in I, so they put Y. Right, so let's look at this list of words with Y at the end. Looking at list 1, the Y has an I sound. Buy, my, cry, fly, dry, sky, spy, try, shy, why. Looking at list 2, the Y has an E sound. Jelly, funny, lucky, silly, carry, army, party, greedy, baby, body. Did you know that the Y at the end of a word is more frequent than the Y at the start? The Y does a lot of work as a long vowel sound at the end of words. And which sound does it usually make? Well, mostly it makes the E sound, but sometimes it makes the I sound. Conclusion, that's it. Done. You have taught the chameleon letter Y. Job well done. We have covered the alternate pronunciations of the letter Y. In this segment, we explained that the chameleon letter Y had an interesting history where its sound started as a vowel and ended as a consonant. And when the printers started to use the Y instead of I at the end of words, the Y shot to stardom as a vowel sound. It is in many English words at the end as a vowel sound. We showed you how to keep the lesson simple, give the students 2 lists of words with the final Y pattern. As always, practice as much as possible until perfect. Well, now let's go to part 2 of this session. We look at chameleon letters C and G. A definition: the rule is that the sounds of C and G change if the vowels E, I, or Y come after them. Well, what is the history of it? You may be wondering why C and G have 2 different sounds. Well, in Old English, the C and G had the sounds K in words like kommen and a G in words like gat, meaning goat. But after 1066 and the invasion of England by the French, many of their words came into English. In their words, the sound of the letter C had weakened from a K sound to a S sound, like in French words like la glace, meaning ice cream, and le lycée, meaning school. It seems it was a similar process for the letter G. It weakened from a G to a J, as in le fromage, meaning cheese, and l'agence, meaning agency. You can see the sound in words like decide, central, silence, produce, finance, advice. You can see the J sound in words like gentle, giant, change, large, charge, suggest, revenge. Let's think about diagnostics. How do you find out if students have difficulty with C and G? Well, what you do is give them some made-up words to read, like CEVE, CYBE, CIRN, and GEME, GIRP, GYPE, like sieve, sibe, cern, jeem, jerp, jipe. Now, if they say Kiev, Kaib, Kim, then you better teach the alternate sound of C. If they do not say Jeem, Jerp, Jipe, then teach the alternate sound of G. And what can go wrong if you teach it? Well, nothing can go wrong, but be sure to explain to students the alternate sounds and demonstrate how to read the words in the chart that we'll now look at. Like, here's a possible mini lesson. Hello everybody, what we're doing today is learning about these 2 letters. So I'll just write them up, C and the G. These letters have got 2 sounds. We call them chameleon letters because they can change their sound. Now this is the rule. I've written it on the board. The letters C and G have two sounds. The C has a S sound before E, I, Y, like in these words, rice, circle, cycle. The G has a J sound before E, I, Y, like in these words, rage, gym, ginger. Now look at the chart. You can see how the sounds change. I'll read the words for you. Like in list 1, a C changes to a S. Race, rice, twice, space, scent, pencil. Now in list 2, G changes to J. Age, cage, rage, large, garbage, ginger. Well, as always, there are some exceptions to the rule. There are words like give and get, but there are only a few exceptions. Nothing to worry about. If you are not sure whether to say g or j, try both sounds to see which one makes sense. This is called the Toto rule. Try one sound, then try the other sound. Well, conclusion is, it's been a great job. We have taught a new phonics rule, and in this session we taught the students that the letters C and G have two different sounds depending on what vowels come after them. Students need to practice the word lists on the chart until they're perfect. When they can do this well, you can introduce other words with these patterns. Well, finally we come to part 3 of this session. We are looking at words with silent letters. A definition is that there are many written English words that contain silent letters. Silent letter words are words that have digraphs where we pronounce one letter and the other is silent. Silent letters at first seem of no use, but they do remind us that our spellings have a long history, and they may be important for reading. For example, the PS in psalm, that may help us make the word easier to recognize next time, because it makes this word different to others. The silent letters are helpful, even if they're silent. And the history, there are quite a few silent letter words in English. Why is this? Well, history tells us that we changed the way we pronounce some words from the olden days, but we still spell them the way we used to say them. For example, we used to pronounce the K in knife as knife. Now we do not do that, but the spelling has stayed the same. Words like knife that kept their old spellings include knife, no, lamb, knee, rap, right, listen. These are what we now call silent letter words. They've got silent letters, and sometimes the printers put in a silent letter not because of history, but because they thought it was a good idea. The example we know most about is the word ghost. The old English spelling of ghost was gost, but in the 1400s, the Flemish printers changed it to make it look like the word geest in their own language with a GH in it. And that's it. The printers sometimes made their own rules. Well, diagnostics, what do we do? Option A, take one word from the teaching chart for this lesson and see if the student can read them. For example, take out knife and see what they say. Gnome, rap, whistle. For example, if the student reads gnome as gnome, then we need to teach about silent letter words. What can go wrong teaching? Nothing can go wrong except that you need to explain the history of silent letter words so that students can see the reason why they're there. Explain that in silent letter words, one letter is silent. Point out that silent letters are helpful because they make the spelling special and it's easier for us to remember these words. Once students can see the silent letter pattern in words, they will be just fine. But it's good for them to practice reading the words on the chart so they are secure with this pattern. Let me give you an example of a mini lesson. Hello everybody, today we are learning about silent letter words. Silent letter words are words where one letter is silent. Look at this word. I'll write this down, K-N-I-G-H-T. No, it is not night time when you go to bed and sleep. It is night, like the knight in shining armor. The K is silent. Why is that? The reason is that in the olden days, people used to pronounce the K in night. In fact, they pronounced the G too. They said connect. Now we do not say the K sound, but the spelling has stayed the same. And the good thing is that the K helps us when we read, so we know it is definitely a knight in shining armor. And here's another interesting story. When we climb up a ladder, we used to call it a ladder, but we do not anymore. And the good thing is that words like ladder remind us of our history. The secret when you read silent letter words is to pronounce one letter, but not the other. Other words with silent letters are on this chart. I'll read them to you. The KN says N, as in not, knit, knife, knee, night, knock. The WR just says as in right, wrist, wrap, wrote, wrong. The MB just says lamb, thumb, crumb, bomb, climb. The GH says ghost. The GN says gnome, gnaw, gnat, sign. The ST just says s, listen, fasten, whistle, wrestle. Shall we read the words together? We're at the end. Conclusion. We have taught about silent letters. They have an interesting history, and it is worth sharing this with students. If they find the words tricky, suggest to them that they use the Toto strategy. Try one sound, then the other, and that will help them read the words in the lists. Practicing the lists will build skill. Practice until perfect. Talk about the silent letters. Encourage students to explain why they are silent letters. They are part of history when people spoke differently. Finally, hope you enjoyed this trip into the world of chameleon letters and silent letters. History helps us to understand why some letters have two sounds and why some words have silent letters. Students enjoy learning how the story of English explains these spelling patterns. Their brains are hardwired to look for structure, and teaching them the why and the how gives them confidence that decoding words in English has a logic, that it makes sense, that it's not just a memory game. And have fun.